All right, kids. I think the show's hooked up. We should be running live now. Good to see you guys this morning. I see Fish and Golf. First blood again, man. I'm gonna have to send you one of the marksmanship badges, baby. So I got an article for us out of the World Economic Forum this morning, and we're gonna dig in and take a look at the flowery language and see how these WEFtists want to kind of change our perspective. And I I actually have a little ray of sunshine, I think, coming out of this article, but you gotta you gotta think about it correctly. So we're gonna chew on it for a minute. Let's do this. And good morning. Oh, well, good morning. Well, hello. So, Eleanor, you're going to have to go talk to mommy about this. But since you're here, give me a hug. Oh, come here. Give me a hug. Look who snuck up on me. Oh, good morning, baby girl. Mwah. Okay. That's the monitor. That's the camera right there. Can you look at the camera and wave and say, "Good morning, Granddad"?
Good morning, Nana.
Did you say, "Good morning, Megan"?
Morning, Megan.
Okay. And Ma's watching too. Say, "Good morning, Ma.
Morning, Mom.
I love you."
I love you.
Okay. Mwah. Now go get ready. And I will see you in a little bit. Here. Take that. Go see mommy. Oh. I was just hitting the button and and Legion just got himself a top comment. Indeed. Oh. Oh. But that's not what we're talking about this morning, Legion. Hey, speaking of which, I sent a message to you, Legion, outside of the infamous thread about, oh, wait a minute, you may have responded. Yes. So you and I need to get on the phone later today. I'm going to be driving like a shitload today. Like I'm going to North Atlanta apparently I'm the only drone pilot working today because I'm going to do one in north of Atlanta up around Buckhead and then Macon and then Decatur. And yeah, I've got 4 shoots today, and it's going to be about 350 miles. So I'll have some time on the road. I can take a phone call, and we will. And okay, you're off at 1800, so we'll have to. Give me a call when you get off. I'll probably be home around then. Anyway, I saw this article this morning, and the article is actually from the World Economic Forum. And as you all know, we're not big fans of the WEFtists here on the show. The World Economic Forum is everything you ever thought everything you've ever heard wrapped up in a tinfoil hat about Illuminati, about global conspiracy theories, about New World Order, any of that's the World Economic Forum. That's who they are. They are the global organization of you will own nothing and you will be happy. You will eat the bugs and you will live in the pods. Right? And we've seen the articles recently, the 100 square foot apartment for $2,700 a month in New York. It's barely a hallway. Like the whole apartment is it's like a little hallway with a bed on one end, barely a kitchenette, and then your bathroom is communal out in the hall. Right? You will live in the pods. I'm here in East Metro Atlanta area. Over the last 2 years, they've built almost 7,000 quote new homes. They're new units. They're fucking cardboard boxes. They're townhomes that are paper thin walls adjoining one another, just stacking people on top of each other. And I mean, here in Conyers, we don't have the water infrastructure, we don't have the electrical infrastructure, and we absolutely don't have the traffic infrastructure to deal with the influx of. I mean, when you're talking about 7,000 homes, you're not talking about 7,000 people. Statistically, you're talking about at least double that, if not more, right? And that is the future that is envisioned by people like the World Economic Forum. Now, I say all that, but as we dig into this article about what the world of work will look like in the future, hey, Michelle joins us. Michelle, you just missed Eleanor, but she should be with you in just a few minutes. So try to grab a hug as she comes in the door and tell her I said good morning. Anyway, so we're looking at this. The article. Here's the article. Why there will be plenty of jobs in the future, even with AI. Now, the article does make a reasonable point that is worth discussing and is worth reflecting positively on, right? As the automobile was introduced, there were the naysayers. Oh, well, who's going to spend money on that when they've got horse and buggy, horse care? Oh, but wait a minute. Don't forget that at that time, horse shit in the street was an actual significant problem, right? The world, especially in large cities, right before the automobile, before Ford's assembly line made the automobile more affordable and it started to really replace horses en masse. Every large American city looks like San Francisco in 2024. There was just shit everywhere. There were less homeless people and fewer criminal aliens murdering lovely young college students, but there was shit everywhere. And that was actually a problem that government entities were having to start to take notice of and having to start to devise solutions for. The world may have benefited at that time from a character like King Harry of the Piss River from Pratchett's Truth, the guy that built his empire on recycling recycling the contents of chamber pots into useful apothecary products. But, you know, and this article is going to cover a few of those things, but we have seen that human beings will in fact adapt to the situation, and in very positive ways in many cases. But I want you to keep in mind as we go into this article that the positive outcome for human beings, even though this article, which comes from, I remind you, comes from the World Economic Forum, seems to speak positively, what they want is always necessarily the opposite of what is good for you. Legion says, my brother and I call them stack and packs. It's HUD's primary tool for injecting diversity into an area. They aren't even affordable, priced for immigrants who work full-time with a percent of lots Section 8. Correct. Sergeant Major says golf courses on top of landfills are the best recycling. That, you know, that's been done in a few places. There's a, and I do like the idea. And golf courses are a better idea than what we see more of. I've seen several spots where old landfills have been capped and cleaned and turned into parks with playgrounds. The problem with those, like there's one in Conyers, the problem with it is that they placed the landfill intentionally to where it was further away from the heart of the city, and you know, because they wanted it to be out of everybody's way. You don't want to have it right in your backyard where you smell it all the time. So when they put the park there, it's a beautiful park and it's got the walking trails. I never see more than 1 or 2 cars in that parking lot, if even that. I've used that place several times as a filming location precisely because nobody ever goes there, and nobody ever goes there because despite the money that was spent on turning that landfill spot into a park, it's inconvenient. It's too far out of the way for people to think, you know, there are other parks that are closer, and that's where people tend to go. So, okay, that's enough preamble. Let's dig into it. Why there will be plenty of jobs in the future, even with AI. So here's your 3 big points. Concerns have been voiced about the effect of new technology on existing jobs many times throughout history. Covered that. But while new technology often replaces certain jobs, it also creates new roles. Notice they said new roles, not new jobs. Investment in skills and infrastructure will help economies adapt to the change that the latest technology, artificial intelligence, will usher in. This isn't particularly an AI issue that I'm about to cover, but I want you to kind of take this and make it part of the lens through which you view the world. For a long time, I've been saying that I go out of my way to use the self-checkout. Whenever it's available, I like to use the self-checkouts. And I do that because the Fight for 15 crowd needs to suffer. The Fight for 15 crowd, we've actually got a woman, I forget who it was now, but we've got one of these Democrats is demanding that we need a $50 minimum wage. I'm like, we've been through this repeatedly for decades. Minimum wage always has, it's always the same result. When you raise the minimum wage, your money gets worth less. You cannot inflate people out of poverty. Oh, I make $50 an hour now because that's the minimum wage. How much is a gallon of milk? Oh, it's $100 a gallon now? You know, and so when you see him say creates new roles, some of these roles need to go away. At its initial inception, the minimum wage destroyed huge swaths of jobs, most of which were the unskilled jobs, the arguably unnecessary jobs that existed almost exclusively for bored retirees, and more importantly, for young men, and I mean young men, 13, 14, 15-year-old men, right? At the age that in the modern world we don't think of them as men, we think of them as children, and we think of them as not being competent to hold any job at all. Michelle has to take off. Thanks for watching this morning, sweetheart. Glad you tuned in. We'll catch you next time. One of the best examples of that kind of a job was the usher in the movie theater, right? Nobody needs an usher in a movie theater. You don't need them. But 14, 15-year-old kid can get paid, 25 cents an hour when $2 an hour is a reasonable hourly wage. Then you've got a 15-year-old kid who's going to turn into a 17-year-old kid who could say, hey, I showed up to work on time. I did the job I was assigned. I did it well. That's 3 useful fucking things. 3 useful things. My mother points out that her dad was 15 when he went to war. That's World War II, by the way. My grandfather was a Marine in World War II, and he lied about his age and went to kill him some Nazis. Ooh, or I suppose oorah in this case. But those jobs went away. Now a kid has to be he has to get a minimum wage job. Well, if minimum wage is $8 an hour, $10 an hour, $15 an hour, it's not worth anything. Okay, personally, I have never worked for minimum wage. I have always argued that if somebody offers to hire me at minimum wage, what he's telling me is if he could pay me less, he would. Which means that he doesn't value me. Doesn't value the labor that I'm offering, or that the job he's offering is not of value sufficient to justify my contribution because I'm worth more than that. Right, in 99, I went to McDonald's and I was getting ready to go to Spain for a month. And I went to McDonald's and interviewed, and I told them, look, here's what I'm looking for. I'm going to work for you for 1 month. I speak Spanish. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to work for 1 month. I'm going to work the grill. I'm going to work as many hours as you'll put me on the schedule for that whole month. And you're going to pay me $2 an hour more than your usual starting wage. In exchange for, I will train your non-English speaking Mexicans who work here to work the grill, and I'll get all that I'll take care of that for you while I'm here, and then I'm going to Spain for a month. And they hired me, and that's how the job went, and it was a good gig. That is the only time I ever worked at McDonald's. Ma says she made $2.65 an hour in 1975 at Sears. Legion asks, did you see California Senate candidates? Yeah, that's the one I'm talking about. I forget her name, but she's there to replace Feinstein, who finally died, thank gods. So, back to the article. In the early 60s, just as the information technology revolution was taking its first baby steps, a committee of scientists and social activists sent an open letter to the U.S. President LBJ, who was one of the worst presidents in history. The cyber nation revolution will create a separate nation of the poor, the unskilled, and the jobless, who will be unable to find work and to afford life's necessities, they argued. And this that letter, by the way, was foundational to the building of LBJ's Great Society, which, as many of you know, has cost this country, since its inception, nearly what the current national debt is. Right? We've literally spent tens of trillions of dollars on welfare programs since the inception of the Great Society. And that deficit in the quality of the American citizen that has self-perpetuated and expanded the number of inadequate citizens who are attached to the government teat is one of the greatest contributors we have to the national debt. My dad and I have had this discussion many times, and he makes a very good point that there are some people that are so useless, that are so unusable, that are such a detriment to any working environment that it makes sense economically to simply pay those people not to come in and be a detriment to your workspace. And I agree with that point generally, but here's the problem with that. Just like feeding starving children in Africa, the only thing that results from you paying useless people to go away and be useless is they spend that unoccupied time being useless and reproducing, generating more useless people. And it's not a one-for-one generation. Right? When you pay one of these useless welfare broodmares to go away and stop being a pain in your ass, she's going to go and shit out another dozen welfare broodmares. They reproduce at an exponentially expanding rate and become a continuously growing problem. The correct answer is to fire them when they're useless and forget about them. They will either make themselves useful and make themselves more congenial. They will either find a way to make that living, in which case they cease being a problem, or they will cease being a problem. But as long as you keep pouring gas on the fire will continue to grow until it runs out of fuel. So, 3 decades earlier, in the 1930s, according to the Atlantic, California mayor wrote to the U.S. president that the industrial technology was a Frankenstein monster that threatened to upend manufacturing, devouring our civilization. These doom and gloom predictions, however, these gloom and doom predictions of how new technology would lead to a worse world proved to be utterly wrong, of course, just as many similar earlier predictions about the effects of new technology had been. They're about to debunk themselves here. The predictions were not wrong. The predictions were incomplete. The advent of the automobile did eliminate horses and horse-drawn carriages as a primary means of transportation. Now, the result of that was not some catastrophic fall. That's true. But the fact is that people who were in the profession of animal husbandry related to the rearing and provision of horses, they had to change their industry. It had to become a niche industry. It's actually a fascinating study. We've talked about giant televisions. You know, I'm sitting in front of a 75-inch paper-thin flat screen TV right here that I paid like $300 for. 20 years ago, this was a $25,000 television. No, in fairness, 20 years ago, this thing didn't exist. The closest you could get to it 20 years ago was about 6 or 8 inches thick, and it weighed a ton. But it was a major investment if you wanted to have a television like that. Technology begins that way, right? The Apple just put out their virtual reality glasses, and they're like $4,000. Those will be a $400 item within the next 5 years, probably less. The horses kind of went the other way, right? Horses became they had become a major business, and the poorest couldn't afford them, but they weren't uncommon, right? Most people would have a horse. Most serious people, most professional people would have a horse, or they would have access to a service that related to it. Automobile came out, revolutionized that industry, and horses remained commoditized, but in a very different market. They became a very different niche. Instead of being something you'd buy for a primary means of transportation, they became a status symbol. They went the other direction. Supply and demand. And that supply and demand shift changed the nature of that entire industry. But the industry itself remained profitable. It remained valuable, but its value changed. So, but the most recent World Economic Forum meeting in Davos presented a deja vu moment. An IMF report concluded that 40% of jobs around the world will be affected by AI. Let's talk about some of the jobs. I'm not going to be able to get as deep into this article as I'd like to, because I am actually going to have to hit the road. But I can push over a few minutes. I might be able to get 20 minutes. So it concluded that 40% of jobs around the world will be affected by AI. In advanced economies, that rises to 60% of jobs set to be affected by machine learning, with about half being negatively impacted. Now, I don't suspect right now that my job, my primary business, is not the YouTube videos, right? I do video and photography. Now, photography generally, videography generally, you're going to see a lot more AI-generated images, AI-generated video. Now, what I do, because people aren't going to be looking for AI-generated images of homes for their real estate ventures. They want to see pictures of the house that they're trying to buy. So that line of income, pretty secure. And then the video side, a young couple that's getting married and wants a wedding video isn't looking for an artificial intelligence interpretation of the expectation of what that wedding was based on a text description. No, they want somebody with a camera to shoot their fucking wedding. So that's good there, right? So the funerals that I cover, I run live streams for funerals sometimes. Nobody's going to be looking for an AI solution there, except for maybe when I show up to do their live stream, I'll be using AI assisted cameras like the one I'm using now that handle some of the auto features, focus and ISO and exposure and the like. But the jobs that are going to go away because of AI, be a lot of personal assistants looking for work, a lot of secretaries, a lot of data analysts, a lot of data entry clerks, a lot of whores, right? We haven't talked as much about the problem of pornography on the show, but we've touched on it a couple of times. And OnlyFans, that's basically what it is. It's digital prostitution. And there are a lot of women that are making a pile of money off OnlyFans right now. Not for long. AI video, it's gonna blow them away, because it's not far from the point now that artificial intelligence can generate video that is close enough to mistakable for real video, that whether or not the audience is looking at an actual person performing lewd acts will become less important than what the presented attributes of that character are. They'll be looking for specific body measurements, colors, etc. And so while the IMF report may conclude that 40 to 60% of jobs will go away because of AI, it's also fair to say that a lot of those jobs could stand to not be done. And I'm not trying to be mean to the secretaries out there, but when you look at the corporate world now, and the way that the cult of DIE, the diversity, inclusion, and equity cult, has infected so many things, take heart. Those are the jobs that will be replaced by AI, necessarily. And when I say that, that's not a political position I'm taking. This is like slavery, right, pre-Civil War. It was about to go away because mechanization and industrialization was about to make it too expensive to be economically feasible. Keeping a DIE staff, like a human resources department that has a diversity, inclusion, and equity branch within it, is going to become prohibitively expensive against the option of having an artificial intelligence engine that literally just processes payroll, examines government compliance requirements, and then you've got one or two people whose job it is to double check all that. And betwixt the pair of them, they will not wield enough functional corporate power to make those changes in the DIE. Where that gets interesting is that the very presence of those DIE departments is in the interest of the World Economic Forum. They have a clear interest in eliminating white people from professional capacities, most especially from the lowest common most especially from those professions that do not require an Ivy League degree and some kind of nepotistic connection with the sort of people that are part of the World Economic Forum. Essentially, the objective there is, if you want to be white and continue to survive and have a profession, then you must somehow join the cult of the WEFtists and the DIE. Right? You must become a part of the upper ruling class, or you must be replaced. Legion says AI is capable of saying white man bad just as well as an expensive HBCU graduate, and it will do it for free. Oh, that is not only true, that is intensely true. So I'm going to put a pin in this one and address that, because it relates to something we talked about already. I think I covered it on Monday, the Google Gemini racist thing. So we've learned more about that. So we covered it a little bit. Google Gemini is Google's AI platform that does like stable diffusion and DaVinci AI type image generation, text to image generation, which is an incredibly powerful, terrifyingly powerful tool, and will be the thing that puts a lot of the online prostitutes out of business. And recently it was discovered that if you asked Google Gemini to produce an image, it just refused to produce images of white people. It seemed to be almost incapable of it. In very, very select cases, like Tim Pool asked it to make a picture of a Viking, and it did one Viking that looks like what you would expect a Viking to look like, right? A blonde white guy with ice blue eyes, with braids and dreadlocks, wearing like furs and an axe. But all the other images it spat out were black or Native American or Asian. They were some kind of other than white, dressed like Vikings. And it has actually come out that what was happening, it's not just that there was a code where Google said, hey, don't make pictures of white people. No, instead, what was happening is you enter your query, right? Show me a Viking. And before it gets to the image generation part of the artificial intelligence system, it's going through the large language modeling part, and it's stopping there for a moment, and Google was adding text to your query. So if you said, show me a Viking, Google was adding like something like, show me a Viking that is diverse, that is culturally diverse, that is not white. They were adding that extra piece of text so that if you said, show me a Viking, Google changed it to show me a non-white, non-street Viking. So it's not just, as Legion points out, that AI is very capable of saying white man bad. It's that an expensive HBCU graduate has explicitly created that AI to say white man bad. And the only thing to question there is, did that software engineer know that what he was doing was putting himself out of a job? So the future of work as a result of AI, I'm actually cautiously optimistic that the jobs that will be destroyed by AI because of the nature of what AI does. Remember, this is, artificial intelligence. We're talking about information technology. Kind of a double-edged sword here. Many of the jobs, if not most of the jobs that AI will render useless are those jobs which are already useless. Right? If you've got more than one person per 10 employees in your HR department, you've got too much HR department. What you've got is a parasite that has grown itself at your expense. Right? Modern journalists, for example. Right? You've got a very small number of journalists that are actually out investigating stories, interviewing people. Right? Most professional journalists do what I do. They read somebody else's articles and comment on them and discuss them. Let's be real. The only reason I'm not being paid millions of dollars a year to do exactly what I do is because I don't parrot the narrative. I don't repeat the primary source. Those people those people will start losing out because of AI. Somebody like me, I'm going to be all right because my revenue is not tied to somebody else choosing whether or not I can do this. What revenue I do generate here comes from you guys, and it comes from you guys making a donation by buying me a coffee. So since I got to that, since I got myself that far, I will go ahead and drop the link in the chat if anybody wants to throw me a couple of bucks for a cup of coffee. But we are 10 minutes over. I'm going to go ahead and button it up there. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching this morning. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.